My name is Anya, and the only thing colder than the Highbury wind that morning was the ring on my finger. They say grief fades. Mine didn't diminish. It sharpened, transforming into a cutting metal, an alloy of forced oblivion and icy clarity. For 12 years, I pledged myself to the man who had saved me, believing that my restored fragility was love. Edward liked to say I was his greatest piece of art, restored, silent, and perfectly framed. He was wrong. I was a ticking bomb, wrapped in silk and a subtle French perfume. Vengeance, you see, isn't a dish best served cold. It's the body getting used to the deep freeze. Today, the ritual was simple: the run. The most primitive, most honest act. The tartan track was damp, the London sky a lead ceiling. I was here to ensure the first domino fell. "Are you training for the neighborhood race?" My opponent smiled with arrogance. His ice-blue eyes reflected the pale morning sun trying to break through the mist. Blake Hayes, a rising star, brimming with a confidence that bordered on insult. He was youth, physical perfection without the shadow of a past. Edward's latest possession, his protégé, his small triumph by proxy. I laced my old running shoes, faded sneakers, worn soles that had seen more miles than this boy had years. They were a comfortable lie, a facade. My ankles had grown accustomed to the pain, a pain I had cultivated, strangely preferring the physical burn to the ache in my heart. "No," I said, my voice calm, low. I took the time to tie a tight double knot, ignoring the impatience in his gaze. "I'm training to win gold." He laughed, a dry, piercing laugh that echoed through the dawn silence. I felt my stomach twist, not with fear, but with anticipation. That laugh was the first ingredient in my recipe, a bitter one. "What's your number?" he asked, leaning in, playing the condescending older brother with the little amateur. He smelled of mint and expensive deodorant. He smelled of easy victory. I straightened my back, my spine suddenly rigid. I looked past him, towards the empty stands, where, a year ago, Edward watched me with the blind, proud love of the early days, before elegance became a trap. I said, "The White Fury." Blake's smile froze. It was a name that should mean nothing to him, a forgotten legend of the American collegiate circuit, a ghost Edward had ensured no one remembered. His coach, a massive, gruff man, a former athlete from the '90s circuit whom I vaguely recognized, approached with a limp. He was checking the stopwatch, head down, then he heard the name. He straightened up. The former athlete went pale. No, he wasn't just white. The blood had drained from his face, leaving a waxy canvas beneath his tan skin. He stepped forward, ignoring Blake, his eyes fixed on me with chilling horror. He saw Edward Thornton's wife, and he saw the phantom. "Take that back, boy, now!" His voice was a raw whisper, a plea. He knew. He knew that name was no coincidence. It was a coded message, a threat pulled from dusty archives. He knew exactly who I was. The rest of that morning was a silent, visual blueprint of what was to come. I ran, of course. I ran along the white lines, my legs lengthening and contracting, each stride a negation of the woman I had become, and an affirmation of the one I had reverted to. My name is Anya. Well, I was Anya Stone before marriage gave me that surname, Thornton, which sounded like an English castle, solid and eternal. Edward Thornton, a man whose life was a series of well-orchestrated wins, whose only known weakness was, ironically, an allergy to almonds, which he treated with comical fear. I was merely his most brilliant victory, his most silent showpiece in the gallery of his success. a former athlete retrained as an art dealer who knew how to keep quiet and smile in the corners of Chelsea drawing rooms. One day in March, exactly 9 months ago, the architecture of our life cracked. It wasn't a thunderclap. It was a silence. A chilling silence. One afternoon, when the light fell perfectly on the abstract canvases I had just hung in my gallery space. I remember the scent, not cheap perfume or hotel soap, something subtler. Edward used a cologne based on vetiver and cedarwood, as predictable and secure as his investments. That day, in the clean laundry he had carelessly dropped on the bed, an unusual gesture, as it was usually the housekeeper's task. There was a sharp citrus note, a reminiscence of lime and sea salt, something summery, light, insolent, something that didn't belong in our London winters. I walked closer. The laundry was so gently folded, but on one of his office shirts, near the collar, a single strand of very long blonde hair clung like a filament of gold. My hair is ash brown, cut short, practical. I picked up the strand. I slid it between my thumb and forefinger. It was soft, too soft, and it smelled of Monoi oil, a scent of stolen holidays, of escape without me. I sat on the edge of the bed. I held the strand. My heart didn't race. My body, the former running machine, knew how to shut down, cut the flow, become efficient. I watched the light play on my wedding ring, the white gold band set with the antique sapphire he had given me. A family heirloom, he said, symbolizing fidelity. You know, I really thought he loved me, I whispered to the silence of the room, to the silk-lined walls. The confession was for me alone. A moment of raw truth before the armor snapped shut. Time began to slow down. The investigation phase began. It was as meticulous as a race plan for the 10,000 meters. First, the phone. He never let it leave his side. But Edward was methodical. He often left his work laptop open on his library desk, knowing I would never touch it, out of respect for confidentiality. It took 4 days to find the perfect excuse to be alone. A gala evening I feigned a migraine to avoid. He left, kissing me on the forehead, the gesture of a benevolent owner. The laptop. The password was our wedding anniversary date, a classic, but also a mockery. I searched. Not the emails, too monitored, not the messages, too obvious. I looked in the photo folder, the one I had always believed was shared, filled with our travels, our dinners, our frozen smiles. And there, deep inside a subfolder, masked under a stock market code name, I found the treasure. Snaps from last weekend, supposedly spent in Edinburgh for a conference. Snaps taken in a seaside villa in Cornwall. The sunlight fell on the woman's face. Long blonde hair, flowing over a white linen dress. She was younger, certainly, but it wasn't her youth that struck me. It was her familiarity. Her name was Clara Vance. And her face, I had seen it once, confusingly framed in a souvenir box Edward kept in the bottom drawer of his dresser. A yellowed photo of a group of teenagers. I barely glanced at it then, but my eye, the gallery owner's eye, records details with surgical precision. Clara Vance was not just the mistress. Clara Vance was the half-sister of my best friend from college, the one who had disappeared 12 years ago in a car accident that cost me my running career. An accident Edward had always helped me recover from, telling me fate had brought us together through that ordeal. The taste of betrayal turned metallic, bitter in my mouth. He hadn't cheated on me with a stranger. He had cheated on me with a ghost from my past, someone who walked on the periphery of my deepest pain. It was a level of cruelty and cynicism I hadn't anticipated. Edward was not just a flighty man. He was a manipulator who fed on weaknesses, and the weakness was the scar on my knee, the end of the white fury, the physical proof that I would never be complete without him. I closed the laptop. I put the blonde strand of hair back into the pocket of my silk robe, like evidence. No tears, no anger, just a terrifying clarity. The broken woman was dead. The white fury was awake, and she had a list. In the weeks that followed, I played perfection. I cooked his favorite meals. I chose his shirts with renewed care. I listened to his day's stories with fascinating attention. My smile was flawless, my kisses precise, my body available but soulless. It was horror. Playing love when the only feeling that inhabited me was a disgust so complete it burned me from the inside. That's when I understood the true nature of the Netflix drama, the elegance of the camouflage. I wore my marriage like a balmain dress, and no one saw the steel beneath the fabric. I even found time to have the sapphire cleaned, so it sparkled with new malice. I started running again, really running. Not the healthy morning jogs, the torture sessions. I woke up before dawn, leaving Edward asleep, the peaceful face of a man without remorse. I contacted my former coach. His name was Gareth, an eccentric Welshman who had witnessed my speed and my fall. He was now retired, living on a small farm. The only question he asked me, after my 12 years of silence, confirmed he was ready. Is it for the games or for oblivion? For victory, Gareth, but the victory will be the starting point for something else, I replied. Gareth was a man of monastic discipline. He demanded I forget the gallery, the silk, and the sapphire. He made me return to the muddy, old track at Highbury, where you met the athletes who truly sweat, not the models. That's where Blake Hayes reappeared, not as a rival but as a target. Edward was his mentor. Edward had financed his rehabilitation after a minor tendon injury. Edward loved to say, Blake is me, but 20 years younger and with new knees. Blake was the extension of Edward's pride. Destroying Blake wasn't just about beating him, it was about shattering the mirror Edward loved to look into. On the day of the duel on the track, in the early morning, when Blake's coach went pale hearing the white fury, the signal was given. My past, which Edward had meticulously buried to better save me and marry me, was back. I remembered the accident, a slippery track, another car. The driver left without a trace. I was left there, my leg shattered, my dream in dust. Edward, my lawyer at the time, helped me with insurance procedures, consoled me, was the rock I rebuilt myself on. He pulled me out of the sports world, convincing me my place was now in elegance and security. Turns out, karma has a sweet tooth, I thought, laced up in my worn sneakers, but with a body ready to explode. Blake only wanted a simple training series, a 400 meters. I wanted more. I set a 1,500 meters, the distance where endurance meets speed, the distance where will breaks the spirit. The gun fired, deafening. I started slow, too slow, in Blake's eyes. He passed me on the first turn with a smug smile. I heard the coach groan, a sound of contained fear, knowing I might still have the old rhythm. The first lap, Blake in the lead, flamboyant. Me right behind him, in his wake, conserving air, my body relaxed, like a serpent preparing to strike. The sky was pearl gray. Silence was my only friend. Flashback. I am in Edward's office 6 months ago. His back is turned, talking business. I slip a small recorder, the size of a thumbnail, under the coffee table. I left it there for weeks, recording the sound of his life. The silence, the sound of his calls, the bursts of laughter exchanged with his associates. And finally, the sound of Clara. A slightly nasal voice, but full of warmth, soft laughter, promises. I had the proof. Hours of stolen kisses, of whispered plans, enough to destroy Edward's reputation for integrity and make him flee, but that wasn't my target. My target was his soul. The 8th lap, the 1,500 meters, my lungs were burning. Blake was still ahead, but his stride was getting heavy. He was breathing hard, loudly. He was running on his youth, his brute strength. I was running on my rage, my memory, my watchmaker's precision. I took control of my thoughts. Each step was a word, each lap a sentence. I remembered the day Edward told me to sell my mother's house, a small coastal home where I trained as a child. Too far away, Anya. You're too elegant for the mud. He had bought that house back, rented it out, and transformed it into a small refuge. The refuge where I found the photos from Cornwall. I accelerated. My body obeyed without a whisper, like a well-oiled machine. The shockwave hit at the start of the final lap. Blake heard me coming. The sound of my old sneakers on the tartan, a dry, steady sound, seemingly effortless. I passed him on the curve. I didn't look. I just felt his energy collapse. It's the most exhilarating moment in running, the instant you feel the opponent is psychologically broken. I crossed the line, alone. He collapsed a few meters behind, retching onto the grass, his breath cut off by humiliation as much as effort. The coach approached me, his eyes bloodshot. "It's you, isn't it? The kid from the accident?" "No," I said, catching my breath, without a superfluous drop of sweat. "I'm just Edward Thornton's wife, and I run." I spent the rest of the day in Northwood, in the upscale suburb, in the house Edward had so proudly built. I took a long shower, washing away the mud from the track, the fatigue, the pain. I wrapped myself in a linen robe, the same one he saw me wearing the night of the discovery. I didn't say a word about the run. Edward came home late, tired, talking about a failed merger. He kissed me, distracted. "You look in shape," he commented. "You should keep up the exercise. It's good for morale." My calm put him at ease. "I just have some papers to do in the library," I told him. "Do you want a drink?" "No, darling, I'm exhausted. Big day tomorrow." I waited until he was asleep. The darkness was total, enveloping. The only light came from the moon, reflecting on the dressing room mirrors. I crept into his library. This was the place where he felt safest. I turned on the small desk lamp, casting a warm circle of light on the dark wood. I took out my phone. I started playing the recordings, but this time, not the stolen kisses. The most important sound. Flashback. 2 months after the accident, in the hospital room. Edward, then just a lawyer holding my hand. He was my guardian angel. I remember he insisted I sign a liability waiver for a certain file. "Just formalities, my darling. I'm handling everything." Edward's biggest secret wasn't Clara. It was the truth about the accident. On the recording I quietly played on his desk, Clara's voice, the mistress, asked, with a bitter laugh, "What if she finds out? What if she finds out you were there when I hit her car?" Edward's voice, "Clara, you were panicked. I was there. I managed it. That's why I'm a lawyer. It's the best managed case of my career. She lost her race. I gained a wife, a grateful, malleable wife, and your promise to stay quiet. What about my sister? She never recovered. Your sister was weak, my dear, and she didn't know how to run as fast as Anya. I remembered, the driver leaving without a trace. It wasn't a stranger. It was Clara. And Edward, instead of reporting it, protected, manipulated the evidence, used my weakness to possess me. Vengeance was a circle. He destroyed my race to win my life. I would destroy his life to win my race. I sat at his desk. I took a sheet of his letterhead. I wrote the shortest, coldest letter I had ever composed. Edward, you were right. I'm in shape. I'm running for gold. I found my old bibs. One, just for you, the White Fury. But I didn't just run the 1,500 meters today. I ran along a truth, the one you tried to hide for 12 years. I left the sound trace under the table. You should listen to it carefully. The way you bought my silence, my gratitude, my life. I've left the house. I took the sapphire. It no longer symbolizes fidelity, but the steel of memory. As for Blake, he is not you. He's just the first thing I broke to show you that you can no longer run. You can't even look at yourself in a mirror that breathes. The race starts now. Anya. I placed the sapphire on the letter. The desk lamplight refracted through the blue stone, casting a sharp shadow over the words. It was cold, poetic, and inevitable. I left the house. The streets of Notting Hill were deserted, bathed in that twilight light that makes white facades look like marble tombs. I walked toward the tube station, my old sneakers in my bag, and a new pair, bright red, on my feet. Lightweight shoes, made for speed and escape. On the big day, the day he would find the letter, I would already be far away, beyond his reach, re-registered under my maiden name, in the shadows of the amateur circuit, preparing for the true start. The sapphire was proof, and Clara's confession was the end of his empire. I remembered the sensation of my lungs burning during the final lap, a sensation I hadn't felt in over a decade. It was the pain of life rediscovered, the antidote to the pain of lost love. I felt alive finally. The silence of the London dawn returned, the calm before the storm. I knew Edward, the man of method, would first try to erase, but he would only find silence. He would only find the echo of the White Fury, an echo that would now resonate in all his future victories, a psychological poison. Stepping onto the train, I touched the blonde strand in my coat pocket. I let go. The wind carried it away into the tunnel, a final farewell to the betrayal. Life is not a marathon. It's a series of sprints, and you have to know when to let go of the brake. If stories like this linger with you, stay. There's always another secret waiting to be told. Subscribe, and let's uncover them, one confession at a time.